Society Matters.
Welcome back to our second episode here with William Donahue. I call him Billy for short. We're going to be getting into some very interesting artifacts that he has brought with him today as a very respected collector. Before I get to Bill, I'd like to say that this is our 71st episode. Bill was our 70th here on HMTV. We've only been here for a couple of months doing these podcasts, but it's been very rewarding. And thank you to the people behind the screen here, behind the cameras that make this all work. I'm back here with William Donahue. What do you have with us for this afternoon here?
Okay, what we have here is a Yosegaki Hinomaru, otherwise known as a Japanese good luck flag. And what this is, during World War II, when Japanese soldiers, before they went off to battle, either at their home or at a Shinto shrine, they had a ceremony where they would take a Japanese flag and they would sign it. The relatives would sign the flag, defend the emperor, punch Churchill in the nose. The Japanese soldier would fold it, put it under his uniform. Every soldier had one. And by the way, this is the only war the Japanese soldiers did this in. When that Japanese soldier was killed on the field of battle, a lot of American soldiers took the flag off the soldier as a souvenir. So these flags are floating with collectors, dealers, they're floating in attics. So I have returned one with my daughter to the family in Japan, and I've collected another 43 other flags. And what we're doing now is that this summer we're going to fly out to Portland, Oregon, to visit the Obon Society. They are the group for returning flags. The Obon Society is led by Rex and Keiku. What they do is we're going to turn these 43 flags over to them. They're going to translate the verbiage on the flag, find the families, and then return the flags to the families in Japan. The Obon Society does a phenomenal job where I'm donating 43 flags to them. They have returned 600 flags over to the families in Japan.
You ever talk to any veterans from World War II, and what was their description of like the Japanese flag? What's the meaning of the Japanese flag, especially during World War II itself?
It was a trophy, if they could. It was a trophy. They looked at it as something they wanted to conquer. You know, they took it down. If you talk to some veterans that were flying bombing raids, when they would see the Japanese flag on the deck of a Japanese aircraft carrier, they look at it as a target.
Yeah, especially after Pearl Harbor, every one of those ships got targeted, and Yamamoto was found. And
they look at it as a target, especially on the deck of the Japanese aircraft carrier.
And like here on Long Island, a lot of the Grumman planes were named after the vengeance of Pearl Harbor itself.
They look at it as like a target. So now with these flags, and you can Google this, these flags are a sense of honor to the Japanese family. They consider it non-biological human remains. So when you it's very spiritual to these families in Japan to return these flags. So when I fly out there this summer, I'm hoping to interview Rex and Keiku and do a short film on the Obon Society and the process of returning a flag.
I kind of wonder, like, if you look at the Japanese Empire, it went almost to the Indian doorsteps, a couple of Aleutian Islands, Guadalcanal, which was not too far from the shipping lanes of Australia and New Zealand, and then out towards Midway. I mean, if you remember the Pacific that was made, and in the first episode,
yes.
And you saw the whole extent of the Japanese rising sun and it across that whole area. It is just it was an extensive empire.
Very extensive, and the oil embargo that we put upon them was one of the causes of World War II.
Sure.
But they had a lot of influence in the Pacific.
Now why? Because Japan was an island nation, right? And it always needed those outside resources. Right. Would you think that was like the final nail in the coffin in terms of the war?
Yeah, and once you cut them off from oil, because they're an island nation, they need oil. They need oil.
And that's part of the reasons why they went to China and Manchuria to get those resources. And the Japanese population was growing, especially after World War I.
And they looked at the emperor as a divinity. They thought he was divine.
Sure. And we kept them, that was a controversy at the end of the war. We kept them in kind of, in that spot, not necessarily in power, but in that figure role.
What you said is very true. Keeping him on the throne was a controversial move, but it was probably the smartest move we could have done, keeping him on the throne. And if you think about it, that was 1945. 1975, the Emperor of Japan visited President Ford at the White House, which shows that it was a smart move to keep him on the throne.
Yeah, and then 15 years after that, you got George H.W. Bush, one of the youngest aviators, and he gets shot down over, it was at Chichimura in the Pacific.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's meeting with the Japanese leadership.
Yeah.
And some of these figures are older, and they're roughly his age, and they look at each other a little bit differently.
Yeah, but it was so true, so true. They are our greatest ally in the Pacific by far. And now...
And that probably comes back to MacArthur being almost the American emperor over there after the war, with understanding some of the customs and culture, even though it was a little controversial, to leave that figure in there to make that transition easier.
Rich, you couch it well. Something that our friend Dave Hughes told me was that when MacArthur went in his car up from the harbor in Tokyo up to the palace, the Japanese people were lining his pathway, but they turned their back to him. And his attachés said to him, should we stop this? And MacArthur said, no, you read your Japanese literature. What they're doing is by lining the streets, they're acknowledging my presence, but by turning their back to him, they're acknowledging their shame.
Sure.
Because no, leave them. This is perfect. This is what should be happening. So.
And they took that fighting. They had some of their controversies, and they were brutal during the war, but they were willing to keep on going in terms of that invasion of Japan and everything.
They wanted to keep on going.
My grandfather would say to me, he goes, if that bomb wasn't dropped, you wouldn't be here today.
Correct.
And he was shipping out across the Pacific. And
I had an uncle who was on the Pacific coast, in the Navy, ready to go in, and his life was saved. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Now you have a piece of literature here with us today.
Yes. So I have a friend named Christine Hartman, and she has a book signed by the author, and the book is 5 Chimneys by Olga Lengyel. Olga Lengyel was a Holocaust survivor. She survived Auschwitz. And this was signed by Olga Lengyel in New York City, and she gave it to her doctor, Norman Treves. Norman Treves would summer in Remsenburg, and Norman Treves gave the book to his house watcher. And the house watcher, when he passed on, he gave it to his daughter, Christine Hartman. So I know Christine, and Christine knows I love history. So Christine showed me the book, and I said to her, why don't we donate it to a Holocaust museum? So I'm the courier today. I'm the courier. But Christine Hartman gave me full permission to donate this book to the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center. So that's what I'm doing here right now.
Here in Nassau County?
Here in Nassau County. Christine is fully aware of this, and she loves the fact that this book will be sitting in a Holocaust museum. So, and she remembers reading this book as a kid and doing a book report on it. So signed by Olga Lengyel, and it's going to be in the right place, in the proper place, as it should be, because we can never forget.
Never forget.
Never forget.
Now, what does a book like this do for people down the road, especially kids?
It could happen again, and by having this book in a Holocaust museum, we have to remember that it can happen again. Therefore, we have to educate people so that it doesn't happen again. We got to talk about it so that it never happens again.
And that's an excellent resource that's local.
Local, exactly. She survived it. She passed it on. She gave it to her doctor. Doctor gave it to his house watcher. House watcher gave it to his daughter. The daughter showed it to me. I said, let's donate it to a Holocaust museum. That's where it's best on display. That's where it's going to have the most education. After October 7th, 2023, we need this to be on display. So we absolutely, we do. I'm completely Team Israel.
Now, you're a South Shore, Eastern Long Island. Right? There was a large Holocaust survivor population, New York City, Northern Jersey, Connecticut, Nassau, and probably parts of Suffolk. You're a little bit further out on the island. Have you seen more Holocaust survivors that were in your neck of the woods, like Remsenburg, Speonk, the Hamptons?
Well, I'll tell you one Holocaust survivor, Werner Reich. I met him at the Holocaust Museum at the Suffolk Community College, and I met him.
Great guy.
I bumped into you know him.
Yeah,
great guy. Now, he's not a secret. He's on YouTube. He passed away, but he's on YouTube. And I brought him out to West Hampton Beach High School to do a little talk with the kids. And he gives a great talk. It's on YouTube.
On tolerance and
great guy.
everything.
As he puts it, twice he ran in front of Dr. Mengele. And you knew, he said, you knew you were running for your life. You knew it. And he was not picked. But he survived Auschwitz, obviously. But his talk on YouTube, great guy, and he was a positive guy, was a happy guy.
Yeah,
and
he knew how to do magic and stuff like that. And
I love.
And he was funny. He'd come out with wild stuff. Yeah, and you're listening to his story, and maybe that's how he coped with it. I mean, it's tough to say, but. He was a very positive, very happy. I love listening to him. He would make jokes. He lived in Smithtown. I was so happy I was able to get him to come to the West Hampton Beach High School. Positive guy. At the same time, you almost feel like you couldn't believe you're talking to this guy. He showed you the tattoo on his arm. Great guy, and would talk about it a lot. And he drew a map about where you ran in front of Mengele. I felt honored to be in his presence. He got his paperwork from Auschwitz, and it was a picture of him. He was like 11, 12 years old, and he joked to the students and say, "There's the criminal," meaning him, And he spent his youth, in prison and concentration camps and in Auschwitz, and then Mauthausen was also the last stop for a lot of people. And
he talks about how he had some of his toes amputated. Once they left Auschwitz and they marched to Mauthausen, a person amputated his toes, and he talks about it very casually, very And you feel like I always take a step back. This guy's amazing because he talks about it very casually. He's a true survivor. And every time I always love pulling him up on YouTube and listening to his talks.
Now let me ask you this here: You've seen survivors before. You've spoken to some. You probably have spoken more than maybe sometimes you remember, right? When you're reading books like this, do you have a greater respect because you have a little of that background information?
Without a doubt.
Especially here, Long Island, there was a lot of people that eventually found their way here.
I look at it this way. When I get up in the morning and I'm going to the bagel place in the morning and I have the mental to-do list in my head, I often say to myself, the people in Auschwitz, they had a totally different mental to-do list in their head. They just wanted to survive. They weren't thinking about, everything bagels. They walked in such a different path that I did. We lead a pretty comfortable life on Long Island. Sure. And the Holocaust survivors, wow, I put them in a different class. They are so strong, so strong.
I did deliveries for a long time. I followed a trucking business, and I did a lot of work for Sears, Sports Authority, Modell's. There was a fitness guy up in Manhasset, right off of Shelter Rock Road, and you delivered those treadmills. Those treadmills were like 200 pounds, the front of them. It was like delivering lead. So we're bringing it in. We're over, I guess it was Roslyn, over by the Northern State Parkway, and they were townhouses, but they were these huge townhouses, and you had to drive around the back because they were split level, and you went in downstairs.
Right.
So here I'm like 21, 22 years old. I'm working, I'm in the military, I'm a college student, right. Working a couple of different jobs, and I'm sitting there and I'm putting together this treadmill, and I'm looking up, and there was a whole collage of this man who survived Auschwitz. Really? So now I'm actually, I'm taking a class on the Holocaust at that time. So I'm looking at it, it's before cell phones, before you could take a picture of it.
Right.
So I'm looking at it, and then I'm showing the lady how to start the treadmill up and everything, and I'm doing the paperwork. I go, "Ma'am, did you have a family member?" I said, "If you don't mind me asking, that survived the Holocaust." She goes, "My husband. Really? He had a job in Auschwitz that was a needed job there, and they actually had some form of currency. And one thing about the Holocaust, right, is nothing makes sense. It's just right. It's an upside down world. You just don't know, right? So there was a form of currency in the camps, And she said that my husband was allowed to use this currency and he got it to get clean drinking water because everything was polluted. They didn't take care of anything, especially for the prisoners.
Right.
So he ended up, he survives Auschwitz. He gets forced out of there on that death march as the Soviets were coming in. He gets liberated. He goes to Israel and he fights for the independence of the Israelis, right?
Wow.
Especially after Truman, recognizes Israel. And then she said that he just wanted to have some sort of sense of normalcy, family, work. Right. And then he came back and she was telling me that. And it was unbelievable. This was probably 1995, 1996. And I remember telling my class the next day, and the professor was like, well, I never heard of something like currency before in Auschwitz. I'm like, neither did I, but I'm not making it up. This is what I was there. And it was amazing. That was
I love stories like
6 to 7 miles away from here. That was it.
I love stories like that. People in everyday life, you're behind them at the bagel place and you're blown away by their experience.
Yeah, you're just going about your daily business.
Yeah, exactly.
You're getting a cup of coffee. At that time, I was delivering a treadmill.
Yeah. And
you run into a lot of stories.
Yeah. One of the veterans on my website, Marvin Bachner, was a liberator of the concentration camp, Ordruf.
Yeah.
And he talks about how when you first saw these people that look like skeletons,
it's one of the earliest camps that we
you
liberated.
want to give them all your rations, and the medic said, no, give them a little bit. You give them, if they'll eat all your rations, it'll kill them. You got to give them a little bit, just a little bit. And to have Marvin Bachner, I just feel honored the fact that I was able to capture that story. And again, he looks at it as like, oh my, they didn't know what they were walking into. They had no prep.
No idea.
They had no idea.
They heard some rumors, but the higher command did a very poor job of getting those colonels and lieutenant colonels and majors and down some information. You might stumble on this because Auschwitz was liberated in January 45. Magic Ink was liberated in, was it July or August of 1944? And the information was there. I mean, and the information was there well before that. That film, the Auschwitz Report.
Rudolf Verba.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's
very tough to wrap your mind around it, but it was state-sponsored, mechanized killing machine, and it's the reason why my kids ask me this all the time. The reason why we talk about it is so that it never happens again, because it can easily happen again.
And that's what we see when we walk in today to do this segment, to do this podcast. We walk right through it here at the Nassau County Holocaust Museum.
Impressive museum, impressive. Every high schooler should come through here.
They definitely.
And should be required.
And they would see something different every time they come here too. So
I think it's very tough for people to wrap their mind around it. So.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, it's great seeing you.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll hope to have you again. Good luck with Honor Flight.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for your gift
Thank you
to
so
the museum
much.
and sharing, the history of the flag here.
Thank you so much, Rich Acritelli.